Okay, so first episode of the podcast for the month of May. As usual, now with this new format, the first episode of the month is kind of a recap of the months before for the French and English channels of the podcast and the YouTube video channels. But let's first start with the word hunt, the words every month that are randomly selected by the system, the computer system from the website, and that we can go then hunt and create pictures with. It's a pretext to practice photography, like every month since 2005. And so basically, the three words for this month is cost, C-O-S-T, discussion, and change. And for those who speak French, in French, the translations are prix, P-A-R-I-X, discussion, and changement. Okay, that's for those who speak both languages, but listen to the English version of the podcast. If once you've taken the pictures, you can do whatever with it, of course. But if you post them on social media, you could add the PCLLTV hashtag. So PCLLTV, and whatever other hashtag that could correspond to the picture you've done. If you do a picture, you can make it represent one of the words, two of the words, or even three of the words, which makes the challenge even more interesting. But anyways, it's just a pretext for an exercise. So let's go directly to the first episodes from the podcast and the YouTube channel. So we started the months with an AIs Hit. So the AIs Hit channel is, for those who don't know, is basically asking AI, artificial intelligence, to describe us, the bio of a famous photographer, and then use AI for the illustration of the bio. And then we'll ask also about the stylistic differences, that what differentiates the photographer from other photographers. And again, ask for some illustrations. So first episode of the month was AI's Hit of William Klein. And I was really kind of impressed. I thought it was pretty good. The way the photos were composed, the frame, the style seemed to work pretty well. William Klein, he's interested in street fashion photography. He's got this really kind of punchy, wide-angle look at things. I think Dall-E did a pretty good work. Midjourney, a little bit less. It's always got this sort of kind of weird varnish. The images are often nicer, more aesthetic, but I still do Dall-E and Midjourney now. Maybe I'll add some other tools in the future. But usually I feel like Dall-E has a better understanding. I don't know how. I feel weird using that word for AI, but has the better understanding of the underlying style. But Midjourney does some interesting stuff too. So anyways, that was the first episode. You can go and check it. It's both in French and English. AI's Hit is always the same, like it's Serial, AI's Hit, and MatNum are always a little bit of the same. The next episode on the YouTube channel was actually VonCam. VonCam is the channel where I talk about technical stuff. And that episode was about the Olympus XA. It's a film camera, for those who don't know, 35 millimeter. It's super tiny, reliable. It's kind of a classic. It's from the 1980s. Great lens, and does for great results. It's a rangefinder, so you can focus by putting the part of the picture you want in focus. By superposing the details of what you're focusing on. Well, it's better explained in the video. The Olympus XA, the video, I show quite a lot of examples, film examples, of course, black and white and color, in different situations, and go and check it out. Then we got the first interview, the first Photo Collective podcast in English, which was Erna Reinsdottir. She's an Icelandic photographer. She's a creative director. She studied also photography. And she's got a really, in my opinion, interesting. I discovered her on her through her Instagram account, and she's got this way of sharing humor and her cool fantasy ideas through photography. And as the title says, she's not really interested in the usual pretty sunset pictures. And that Instagram feed is kind of her creative space, personal creative space, which she shares happily to us. And so we have a small dialogue about the reasons of her photography, how she got to that point. And yeah, so really nice to be talking with her. I really like her work, so go and check it out. You will have the links on the podcast, on the episode, and on the YouTube channel. You have everything in the description. Then we went to the next AIs Hit, and that was Helen Levitt. And here, again, every time I ask ChatGPT to give us the bio and go through what differentiates the style of the photographer, it's never very refined, but that's what we get for now. And as we know, ChatGPT, most of us know, it's not really trying to tell the truth. It's trying to say something that sounds right, sounds plausible. And then I give that information to Dall-E and Midjourney. And this episode I felt was not as successful as the one for William Klein. I did find the resulting pictures, or I don't know how to call them actually. Are they pictures? That's a really interesting question that we might dig into one of these days. But the looks were kind of more of the era than lookalikes of Helen Levitt's work, in my opinion. You can go check the video, but I definitely feel she's a social photographer. She's interested in the urban side of things in the New York region, and she's a pioneer of colors. So the photos definitely show the usual subject, and the colors, the grain, the appearance is that of the films of the time. Same as for the outfits, and it really looks from the 60s, 70s, 50s even. But then there's some weird, eerie things that come out, as usual, but a little bit more, I felt, with Dall-E. You have those people walking on crosswalks, but they walk at 90 degrees. They follow the lines instead of cross them. Funny thing, almost on every picture, that's how it was. And then Midjourney is always a Midjourney look with this kind of weird varnish on it. Nice pictures, but I don't know. Interesting episode nonetheless, I believe. It's in French and in English, same content, but if you're curious, if you speak French better, go on the French channel, same for the podcast. It's never exactly the same because I obviously improvise a little bit. And my French is a little bit more refined. Anyways, next episode for the month, that was MatNum. MatNum is for matière numérique in French. So that's the channel where, the playlist of the channel, the video YouTube channel, where I talk about computational photography, developing photo software, because I develop software. I develop photo apps where I transform images, I create textures, and matière numérique means digital matter. I transform the underlying images into something slightly different. And originally that was for my personal work, but I decided to distribute them a few years back through apps, basically Camare, Vika, Darkcam, and Digital Paula, for apps that kind of work with a similar image engine. And in that episode, you will see what I had a big bug. I bugged the release of one of the new image filters in one of the apps, Camare, where I messed up the treatment of one of the color channels of the filter. I go deeper in the details in the video, but basically I talk about how I have to resolve that, and why actually the bug was kind of interesting. That episode talked about that. And also that month I started integrating images coming from AI into my image processing techniques. So I basically take images from Midjourney and put them through my apps and see if it's more realistic or if it makes more sense. If it feels more human. Weird to say that. I guess we'll have to get used to it. But yeah, you'll find all of this on this episode, and also all the pictures I've taken with my apps at the same time. So yeah, you can go check this. This is again in French and in English. Then we had I forgot about the French channel. At the same time, we had Erna Reinsdottir on the French channel. We had a dialogue with Yves Curchod. Yves Curchod is a non-professional photographer, but and that dialogue was an extension of a podcast from the Photo Festival, where he will talk about his relation, as usual, with photography, the reasons of photography. And he talked with me on why he likes this creative space, which gives him a personal, private space besides his other professional occupation, and talks about urbex, abstract photography, and the freedom the process gives him. And it happens that in the meantime, the festival had started, and actually Yves Curchod, with the work that was actually first selected by the festival, he also won the prize. There was a contest, he participated, and he became the laureate of the prize for the Photo Geneva Festival that year. So it's interesting, and you can go check all the links to his website. The link to his website is online on the episode. Then I talked about Van Cam. Oh, then I'm going back to the dialogues. Gesine Born is a photographer. That's an English podcast. This podcast. Gesine Born is a photographer I met in Berlin a few years back. She's a photographer, but she's also and mainly specialized expert in scientific communication, photography being one of the facets. And she's super active in AI imaging. She practices. She creates images. She's got a plethora of work illustrating scientific concepts, and she talks about her relationship to photography, the reasons of photography. Again, that's the thematic for this podcast, and explains also her relationship to how she is serious about respecting the underlying truths of images. And so really interesting what she says about AI and how the prompt might be a necessity when you want your image to make sense and be in peace with truth. Anyways, interesting dialogue. We'll hear more from her in the future. She's also in opening an institute for scientific communication, and she's got a focus also on the representation of women in science, trying to bring back the women of science into the scene, because they were there, but basically patriarchal society didn't really represent women as much as it could. So super interesting dialogue. I really enjoyed it. She's great. So go check that out. Then the French version of the podcast, that was the new episode, was Julie Langenegger, who's half Swiss, half Persian, lives in Canada right now, and she talks about her work in photography, which is very much focused on identity, the abroad, nostalgia, and how we are linked to our origins, and how we can find sense through images. And super interesting dialogue. That's in French, for those who speak French. I'm not sure the translator on YouTube is really good, but you can try. And she does speak English, so don't hesitate to request I have a dialogue with her another time in English. Don't hesitate to comment below or contact me directly through Instagram. Then we went to AIs Hit again. That week was Jean Lucif, this French photographer. Interesting results. I really kind of liked the results. The pictures coming out of AI. I'm still stuck, still feel uncomfortable when I say that. Are they images? Are they photographs? They're images, but are they photographs? What are they? But yeah, this experiment with AI's Hit was interesting with Jean Lucif, who's a fashion photographer, lots of portraits. I had difficulties sometimes, I point that out in the examples I show in that episode, had difficulties coming out with photos that looked like Jean Lucif's style. Sometimes it came out really nice, but some other time felt complicated. And I was wondering if in the black box of AI, we don't really know what AI is, how it learned all the things it does. And Jean Lucif's work is a lot of nudes. And we know AI, Dall-E and Midjourney tend to censor nudes. So was that part of the difficulties I had creating the good illustrations for the episode? I don't know. You might want to check and comment and suggest. My prompts are probably not the best in the world. And then last episode for that last April, that's VonCam. VonCam is about technical stuff, and we will see how the Keck's 30mm cap lens f10 meant for Leica M mount, how it works. It works pretty well. It's actually a plastic lens, quite cheap. The price is kind of unbeatable, on which the Keck's put the lens of those old Kodak cameras, those kind of reusable cheap cameras with the plasticky lens. Didn't give bad results, but basically that's what they did. They did a plastic cap and put the lens on. And it works, as I said before, pretty fine. So you'll find example on this episode, examples I discussed the results. And yeah, and that's basically it for this episode of the podcast. Don't hesitate to suggest new ideas for it or comment. I will, of course, there's some new things coming up for the podcast. It's a variable geometry, but hopefully, again, was entertaining and catch you in the next episode.